Lysander Thorne, a titan of industry, a man draped in the silks of success and the glint of gold, possessed a kingdom of assets, but a desert of genuine connection. Mansions sprawled like fallen empires, sleek vehicles purred in his vast garages, and investments bloomed across continents, yet not a single soul mirrored his gaze with unadulterated trust. Then, the screech of tires, the brutal kiss of metal, a violent ballet that left him broken but breathing in the stark white silence of a hospital room. From the sterile confines, a harsh reality seeped through the thin walls. His kin, vultures circling a fallen giant, their voices sharp with avarice as they squabbled over his impending inheritance. A cold shard of disillusionment pierced Lysander's heart. An audacious plan bloomed in the sterile air. He would feign a coma, a silent sentinel observing who, if anyone, would offer solace without the lure of his fortune. Days bled into weeks, marked only by the rhythmic sigh of medical machinery. Lysander lay still, an island in a sea of hushed whispers. Not a single relative uttered a syllable of genuine concern. Their inquiries were merely veiled probes into the timeline of his demise, the unlocking of his vast estate. The silence in his room became a suffocating shroud, punctuated only by the insistent beeping of life support. Lysander, once cocooned in opulence, now understood the stark poverty of his emotional landscape. His heart, a bruised plum beneath his bandaged ribs, ached with a loneliness that no ledger could quantify. In the stillness, a poignant question echoed. Would a single soul have lingered by his side if he were stripped bare of his possessions? The man who had commanded boardrooms and sculpted empires now existed as a phantom, invisible to a world blinded by his wealth, while his own spirit yearned for the tangible, the authentic. He lay suspended between a reality obsessed with his net worth and his desperate craving for something real, a flicker of the humanity he had long since lost touch with. As twilight painted the hospital corridors in hues of lavender and gray, and the hushed footsteps of the night shift echoed softly, a quiet presence would grace Lysander's room. Nurse Seraphina believed him lost in the silent abyss of a coma, a still form beneath crisp white linen. Yet, drawn by an unseen current of empathy, she spoke to him as one would to a cherished confidant. By the gentle luminescence of a solitary lamp, she unfurled the pages of well-loved books, her voice weaving tales of faraway lands and forgotten heroes. Sometimes, a mischievous glint would spark in her eyes as she recounted silly anecdotes, her own laughter a fragile melody in the sterile air, a hopeful tendril reaching into his perceived unconsciousness. On other nights when the weight of her own world pressed down with crushing force, Seraphina's voice would soften, tinged with a poignant sadness. She confided in the silent figure, sharing the anxieties that gnawed at her young son's grave illness, the relentless tide of medical expenses, the days when her resolve threatened to shatter. Yet, through her own weariness and heartache, she never treated Lysander as a mere burden, a wealthy cipher. To her, he was a fellow human being, deserving of dignity and care. Lysander, though outwardly still, absorbed every syllable. Each nightly visit, each whispered word of kindness, was a tiny hammer blow against the fortress he had built around his heart. Seraphina asked for nothing, offering only her time, her laughter, her sorrow, and in doing so, unknowingly gifted Lysander something immeasurable, the first fragile bloom of hope that perhaps not all genuine goodness had vanished from the world. One tempestuous night, as rain lashed against the hospital windows like a weeping sky and thunder reverberated through the building's bones, the usual stillness of Lysander's room was broken by the soft, ragged sounds of muffled weeping. Seraphina sat beside his bed, her hands trembling as she clutched his unmoving fingers. Believing him lost in the coma's embrace, the dam of her emotions finally breached. In a shaky whisper, thick with despair, she confessed that her son's condition had plummeted. The life-saving surgery now a distant, unattainable star beyond her financial reach. She had exhausted every avenue, worked relentless double shifts, sold her few precious belongings, even gone without sustenance. But it was not enough. Between heart-wrenching sobs, she admitted her utter desperation, her silent pleas for a miracle, any miracle, to save her child. Lysander lay still, but within him, something shattered. In all the long, silent weeks, no one had spoken to him with such raw honesty, such aching vulnerability. Seraphina, a woman with nothing to gain from his vast wealth, had offered her heart freely, never once seeking recompense. For the first time in his gilded life, Lysander understood the profound weight of true compassion. In that moment, surrounded by the sterile hum of machines and the storm's furious lament, Lysander realized the extent of his blindness. This woman's fierce love for her son, her unwavering bravery, her inherent kindness, this was the true, unadulterated wealth he had unknowingly craved. And for the first time in years, tears stung the corners of his closed eyes. The following morning, the hospital room was bathed in the golden embrace of sunlight. For the first time since the violent crash, Lysander Thorne's fingers twitched. Then slowly, his eyelids fluttered open. A flurry of astonished nurses filled the room, their excited whispers echoing in the sterile air. Doctors spoke of a miraculous awakening, but Lysander knew the true miracle had been sown the night before, in a tearful confession and a mother's boundless love. As his strength returned, Lysander quietly summoned his lawyer and orchestrated a discreet arrangement. Seraphina's crushing debts vanished like morning mist. Her son's crucial surgery was fully funded and provisions were made to secure their future. He insisted on complete anonymity. He sought no gratitude, no accolades. He simply wished to give as she had given, freely, without expectation. The hospital buzzed with hushed whispers of a miraculous intervention, an anonymous benefactor appearing when all hope seemed lost. Seraphina wept with unrestrained joy, clutching her son, never knowing that the silent figure she had confided in during the darkest hours had heard every word and had found in her selfless spirit the courage to finally become the man he was always meant to be. Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Lysander found himself a solitary figure at the edge of a vibrant playground, melting into the tapestry of parents and passers-by. He leaned against the rough bark of an ancient oak, a silent observer as Seraphina's son, now radiant with health and boundless energy, chased laughter across the sun-drenched grass. Seraphina followed close behind, her face illuminated by a pure, unburdened joy that Lysander had once believed was an emotion lost to those ensnared by wealth. He remained at a respectful distance, content to be a silent architect of this newfound happiness. No introductions were needed, no words of thanks required. Knowing they were safe, knowing they were free, was his only reward. As the joyous shrieks of children filled the air and the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, Lysander Thorne smiled, a genuine, deep smile that resonated from the very core of his being. He finally understood that his true wealth had never resided in the cold numbers of his bank accounts, but in these fleeting moments, in the lives touched and the hopes restored. True wealth, he realized, was not measured by what one hoards, but by what one gives away with an open heart. As he turned to leave, his spirit lighter than it had ever been, a profound truth settled within him. Sometimes, when you cease the pretense, you finally discover the real treasures that were waiting all along.